Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Haunt Collection Podcast. I'm Chris Codina, your host, and this week we'll be covering Psychosis, which is a pretty well-known creepypasta. The reason I wanted to cover this one pretty early on the show is because, for one, it was one of the first creepypastas I ever read. I can't remember for sure which was the first. I think it was Candle Cove. But that was before I knew what the word creepypasta was. I don't think I had heard of Slenderman before that, but I know once I heard the term creepypasta and I kind of became interested in it and looked it up, Psychosis was one of the first ones I read. And also, I think that it kind of encompasses some of the best and also worst of creepypasta. We'll get into that more as we go along. But this is a bit of a longer one, so we'll get started, and I'll stop and talk about it as I go when something jumps out at me. So let's get going. This is Psychosis by Matt Dymerski. Sunday. I'm not sure why I'm writing this down on paper and not on my computer. I guess I've just noticed some odd things. It's not that I don't trust the computer. I just need to organize my thoughts. I need to get down all the details somewhere objective. Somewhere I know that what I write can't be deleted or changed. Not that that's happened. It's just everything blurs together here, and the fog of memory lends a strange cast to things. I'm starting to feel cramped in this small apartment. Maybe that's the problem. I just had to go and choose the cheapest apartment, the only one in the basement. The lack of windows down here makes day and night seem to slip by seamlessly. I haven't been out in a few days because I've been working on this programming project so intensively. I suppose I just wanted to get it done. Hours of sitting and staring at a monitor can make anyone feel strange, I know, but I don't think that's it. I'm not sure when I first started to feel like something was odd. I can't even define what it is. Maybe I just haven't talked to anyone in a while. That's the first thing that crept up on me. Everyone I normally talk to online while I program has been idle, or they've simply not logged on at all. My instant messages go unanswered. The last email I got from anybody was a friend saying he talked to me when he got back from the store, and that was yesterday. I'd call with my cell phone, but reception's terrible down here. Yeah, that's it. I just need to call someone. I'm going to go outside. Okay, so let's talk about this intro here. Pretty solid start. We know something is strange. We just don't know what. Our narrator's feeling a little off, and he was kind of, focused into his routine and just realized that, a few of the things that usually happen have been happening. He hasn't been hearing from people that he knows, but, nothing too strange on the surface, but it's just kind of feeling off. I think that's a good draw. Not too much foreshadowing, nothing like that. Just to kind of lead us in and say, okay, let's see where this is gonna go. Let's continue. Well, that didn't work out so well. As the tingle of fear fades, I'm feeling a little ridiculous for being scared at all. I looked in the mirror before I went out, but I didn't shave the 2-day stubble I've grown. I figured I was just going out for a quick cell phone call. I did change my shirt, though, because it was lunchtime, and I guessed that I'd run into at least one person I knew. That didn't end up happening. I wish it did. When I went out, I opened the door to my small apartment slowly. A small feeling of apprehension had somehow already lodged itself in me, for some indefinable reason. I chalked it up to having not spoken to anyone but myself for a day or two. I peered down the dingy gray hallway, made dingier by the fact that it was a basement hallway. On one end, a large metal door led to the building's furnace room. It was locked, of course. 2 dreary soda machines stood by. I bought a soda from one the first day I moved in, but it had a 2-year-old expiration date. I'm fairly sure nobody knows those machines are even down here, or my cheap landlady just doesn't care to get them restocked. I closed my door softly and walked the other direction, taking care not to make a sound. I have no idea why I chose to do that, but it was fun giving in to the strange impulse not to break the droning hum of the soda machines, at least for the moment. I got to the stairwell and took the stairs up to the building's front door. I looked through the heavy door's small square window and received quite the shock. It was definitely not lunchtime. City gloom hung over the dark street outside, and the traffic lights at the intersection in the distance blinked yellow. Dim clouds, purple and black from the glow of the city, hung overhead. Nothing moved, save the few sidewalk trees that shifted in the wind. I remember shivering, though I wasn't cold. Maybe it was the wind outside. I could vaguely hear it through the heavy metal door, and I knew that it was that unique kind of late-night wind, the kind that was constant, cold, and quiet, save for the rhythmic music it made as it passed through the countless unseen tree leaves. I decided not to go outside. I really like how he describes this nighttime solitude. Like, it sounds ominous, but at the same time, it also just sounds like it's nighttime. Because of, like, the solitude and the fact that he isn't seeing anybody, and that he apparently has some lost time, like that he thought this was, like, noon, but it's nighttime. Clearly, it's off-putting for our narrator, but at the same time, not necessarily anything is off yet. It could be that the narrator's off and just having a weird day. But there's a lot of good details here. Like I said, the description of what it looks like outside. The soda machines just kind of, humming along. You know how those vending machines sound. They're just, background noise. And the fact that he kind of, wanted to keep it quiet and be stealthy about going back inside, that he didn't want to make a lot of noise. It's a lot of good build up here to me. It's definitely kind of setting a good groundwork for the solitude and the paranoia. Let's continue. Instead, I lifted my cell phone to the door's little window and checked the signal meter. The bars filled up the meter, and I smiled. Time to hear someone else's voice. I remember thinking, relieved, it was such a strange thing to be afraid of nothing. I shook my head, laughing at myself silently. I hit speed dial for my best friend Amy's number and held the phone up to my ear. It rang once, but then stopped. Nothing happened. I listened to silence for a good 20 seconds and then hung up. I frowned, and looking at the signal meter again, still full. I went to dial her number again, but then my phone rang in my hand, startling me. I put it up to my ear. "Hello?" I asked, immediately fighting down a small shock at hearing the first spoken word in days, even if it was my own. I had gotten used to the droning hum of the building's inner workings, my computer, and the soda machines in the hallway. There was no response to my greeting at first, but then, finally, a voice came. "Hey," said a clear male voice, obviously of college age, like me. "Who's this?" "John," I replied, confused. "Oh, sorry, wrong number," he replied, then hung up. I lowered the phone slowly and leaned against the thick brick of the stairwell. That was strange. I looked at my received calls list, but the number was unfamiliar. Before I could think on it further, the phone rang loudly, shocking me yet again. This time, I looked at the caller before I answered. It was another unfamiliar number. This time, I held the phone up to my ear, but said nothing. I heard nothing but the general background noise of a phone. Then, a familiar voice broke my tension. "John?" was the single word in Amy's voice. I breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, it's you, I replied. Who else would it be? She responded. Oh, the number. I'm at a party on 7th Street and my phone died just as you called me. This is someone else's phone, obviously. Oh, okay, I said. Where are you? She asked. My eyes glanced over the drab, whitewashed cylinder block walls and the heavy metal door with the small window. At my building, I sighed, just feeling cooped up. I didn't realize it was so late. You should come here, she said, laughing. Nah, I don't feel like looking for some strange place by myself in the middle of the night, I said, looking out the window at the silent, windy street that secretly scared me just a tiny bit. Think I'm just going to keep working or go to bed. Nonsense, she replied. I can come get you. Your building is close to 7th Street, right? How drunk are you? I asked lightheartedly. You know where I live. Oh, of course, she said abruptly. I guess I can't get there by walking, huh? You could if you wanted to waste half an hour, I told her. Right, she said. Okay, have to go. Good luck with your work. Okay, so... Did you ever, freak yourself out, get in your own head? It's something I've definitely done where, if you're alone when you're not used to be, or if it just happens to be a little more quiet than it usually is, you don't see anybody on the street outside, it's nighttime, the house is making noises, the apartment's making noises, something, like that. And you just kind of get in your own head that something is wrong. I feel like that's a thing that definitely happens, and I think so far the author is doing a pretty solid job of conveying that feeling of you don't really want to trust anything that you hear because you think it's whatever it is about to jump at you with a knife. Yeah, and then we have this, we learned that our narrator's name is John, and we need his friend Amy, who does act a little strange, at least because we're seeing it from John's point of view. The fact that she's a little off about where he lives, and, she just kind of cuts it off real quick, cuts conversations off. But, once again, we don't really know if anything is that off here. But let's continue and see where this kind of strange night goes for John. I lowered the phone once more, looking at the numbers flash as the call ended. Then, the droning silence suddenly reasserted itself in my ears. That's a nice alliteration. Anyways, the two strange calls and the eerie street outside just drove home my aloneness and this empty stairwell. Perhaps from having seen too many scary movies, I had the sudden, inexplicable idea that something could look in the door's window and see me. Some sort of horrible entity that hovered at the edge of aloneness, just waiting to creep up on unsuspecting people that strayed too far from other human beings. I knew the fear was irrational, but nobody else was around, so... I jumped down the stairs, ran down the hallway into my room, and closed the door as swiftly as I could while still staying silent. Like I said, I feel a little ridiculous for being scared of nothing, and the fear has already faded. Writing this down helps a lot. It makes me realize that nothing is wrong. It filters out half-formed thoughts and fears and leaves only cold, hard facts. It's late. I got a call from a wrong number, and Amy's phone died, so she called me back from another number. Nothing strange is happening. Still, there was something a little off about that conversation. I know it could have just been the alcohol she'd had, or was it even that herd that seemed off to me? Or was it... Yes, that was it. I didn't realize it until this moment, writing these things down. I knew writing things down would help. She said she was at a party, but I only heard silence in the background. Of course, that doesn't mean anything in particular, as she could have just gone outside to make the call. No, that couldn't be it either. I didn't hear the wind. I need to see if the wind is still blowing. Alright, now this is, we're getting into it. he talks about that, like, you kind of scare yourself. And sometimes I don't necessarily like when stories do this is just like in a horror movie, but I don't think it's too egregious here, because it's the same thing. It's trying to sound like somebody would talk in real life, so I kind of psyched myself up and assumed there would be a monster looking at me. I think that's kind of natural. I'm not too mad at it here. And, it's like we talked about, he gets into it here where everything seems fine, but at the same time, there's a couple things that seem off. We come back to that wind that we talked about before, and he notices that he didn't hear on the other end. He didn't hear any party sounds. So little stuff, but stuff that you notice, stuff that kind of sticks out. So let's continue and see what happens on Monday. I forgot to finish writing last night. I'm not sure what I expected to see when I ran up the stairwell and looked out the heavy metal door's window, feeling ridiculous. Last night's fears seems hazy and unreasonable to me now. I can't wait to go out into the sunlight. I'm going to check my email, shave, shower, and finally get out of here. Wait, I think I heard something. It was thunder. That whole sunlight and fresh air thing didn't happen. I went out into the stairwell and up the stairs, only to find disappointment. The heavy metal door's little windows showed only flowing water as torrential rain slammed against it. Only a very dim, gloomy light filtered in through the rain, but at least I knew it was daytime, even if it was a gray, sickly, wet day. I tried looking out the window and waiting for lightning to illuminate the gloom, but the rain was too heavy, and I couldn't make out anything more than vague, weird shapes moving at odd angles and the waves washing down the window. Disappointed, I turned around, but I didn't want to go back to my room. Instead, I wandered further upstairs, past the first floor and the second. The stairs ended at the third floor, the highest floor in the building. I looked through the glass that ran up the outer wall of the stairwell, but it was that warped, thick kind that scatters the light. Not that there was much to see through the rain to begin with. I opened the stairwell door and wandered down the hallway. The 10 or so thick wooden doors, painted blue a long time ago, were all closed. I listened as I walked, but it was the middle of the day, so I wasn't surprised that I heard nothing but the rain outside. As I stood there in the dim hallway, listening to the rain, I had the strange fleeting impression that the doors were standing like silent granite monoliths erected by some ancient forgotten civilization for some unfathomable guardian purpose. Lightning flashed, and I could have sworn that, for just a moment, the old grainy blue wood looked just like rough stone. I laughed at myself for letting my imagination get the best of me, but then it occurred to me that the dim gloom and lighting must mean there was a window somewhere in the hallway. A vague memory surfaced, and I suddenly recalled that the third floor had an alcove and an inset window halfway down the floor's hallway. I think this kind of aside about the doors looking like, monoliths, it's interesting. I feel like it might be a little out of place because I'm not sure it really alludes to anything. I think it's just sort of trying to add to the foreboding aspect of it. It's just sort of a little nitpick. It's nice, but I don't know if it necessarily need to be there. But that's a nitpick, I think. Anyway, let's keep going. We're still kind of in this same, something is off, but let's keep looking at what's going on. Excited to look out into the rain and possibly see another human being, I quickly walked over to the alcove, finding a large thin glass window. Rain washed down it, as with the front door's window, but I could open this one. I reached a hand out to slide it open, but hesitated. I had the strangest feeling that if I opened that window, I would see something absolutely horrifying on the other side. Everything's been so odd lately, so I came up with a plan, and I came back here to get what I needed. I don't seriously think anything will come of it, but I'm bored. It's raining, and I'm going stir-crazy. I came back to get my webcam. The cord isn't long enough to reach the third floor by any means, so instead I'm going to hide it between the two soda machines in the dark end of my basement hallway. Run the wire along the wall and under my door, and put black duct tape over the wire to blend it in with the black plastic strip that runs along the base of the hallway's walls. I know this is silly, but I don't have anything better to do. Well, nothing happened. I propped open the hallway to stairwell door, steeled myself, then flung the heavy front door wide open and ran like hell down the stairs to my room and slammed the door. I watched the webcam on my computer intently, seeing the hallway outside my door and most of the stairwell. I'm watching it right now, and I don't see anything interesting. I just wish the camera's position was different, so I could see out the front door. Hey, somebody's online! Okay, so, kind of continuing the same, kind of ramping up, the solitude, this sort of strangeness, we know it's raining and kind of weird outside. We have this setup of the camera, which is interesting, so we can kind of watch outside. This guy's, John, he's talking himself into not going outside because he's buying into his paranoia a little more than he wants to admit. But not too much changed yet. So far I'm enjoying this. It's been a long time since I read it originally. I think the writing itself is pretty solid, aside from the thing about the doors that I pointed out. I think that might have been just a little bit of embellishment, but nothing really criminal. Let's continue and see who's online. I got on an older, less functional webcam that I had in my closet to video chat with my friend online. I couldn't really explain to him why I wanted to video chat, but it felt good to see another person's face. He couldn't talk very long, and we didn't talk about anything meaningful, but I feel much better. My strange fear has almost passed. I would feel completely better, but there was something odd about our conversation. I know that I've said that everything has seemed odd, but still, he was very vague in his responses. I can't recall one specific thing that he said. No particular name or place or event. But he did ask for my email address to keep in touch. Wait, I just got an email. I'm about to go out. I just got an email from Amy that asked me to meet her for dinner at the place that we usually go to, quote unquote. I do love pizza, and I've just been eating random food from my poorly stocked fridge for days, so I can't wait. Again, I feel ridiculous about the odd couple of days I've been having. I should destroy this journal when I get back. Oh, another email. Oh my god, I almost left the email and opened the door. I almost opened the door, but I read the email first. It was from a friend I hadn't heard from in a long time, and was sent to a huge number of emails that must have been every person he had saved in his address list. It had no subject, and it said, simply, "Seen with your own eyes, don't trust them, they." What the hell is that supposed to mean? The words shocked me, and I keep going over and over them. Is it a desperate email sent just as something happened? The words are obviously cut off without finishing. On any other day, I would have dismissed this as spam from a computer virus or something, but the words, "seen with your own eyes." I can't help but read over this journal and think back on the last few days and realize that I have not seen another person with my own eyes or talked to another person face to face. The webcam conversation with my friend was so strange, so vague, so eerie. Now that I think about it, was it eerie? Or is the fear clouding my memory? My mind toys with the progression of events I've written here, pointing out that I have not been presented with one single fact that I did not specifically give out unsuspectingly. The random wrong number that got my name, and the subsequent strange return call from Amy. The friend that asked for my email address. I messaged him first when I saw him online, and then I got my first email a few minutes after that conversation. Oh my god, the phone call with Amy. I said over the phone, I said that I was within half hour's walk of 7th Street. They know I'm here. What if they're trying to find me? Where is everyone else? Why haven't I seen or heard anyone else in days? No, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I need to calm down. This madness needs to end. Okay, so the paranoia is really picking up. Everything seemed like it was mostly fine. Our narrator, John, he was feeling alright. He got to talk to somebody and saw them via webcam, even if they were a little strange. But then our old friend Amy says, hey, come out for pizza. Everything sounds good. But then, of course, we have this email. Seen with your own eyes, don't trust them, they. Doesn't really mean anything, but it's strange. It's from a friend. And with the fact that he hasn't seen anybody, it speaks to his paranoia. And I think it's interesting to watch him juggle this, work this out. It seems I like how the author presents him kind of going back and forth on this in pretty real time. There's just enough for him to sort of connect dots, even if they aren't necessarily supposed to be connecting. But you see he still isn't quite convinced. And it doesn't seem too much of a stretch, though, that these dots connect. Even if normally it would seem crazy, everything has another explanation, which is solid. Let's continue and see if the madness does end. I don't know what to think. I ran about my apartment furiously, holding my cell phone up to every corner to see if it got a signal through the heavy walls. Finally, in the tiny bathroom, near one ceiling corner, I got a single bar. Holding my phone there, I sent a text message to every number on my list, not wanting to betray anything about my unfounded fears. I simply sent, "You seen anyone face to face lately?" At that point, I just wanted any reply back. I didn't care what the reply was, or if I embarrassed myself. I tried to call someone a few times, but I couldn't get my head up high enough, and if I brought my cell phone down even an inch, it lost signal. Then I remembered the computer, and rushed over to it. Instant messaging everyone online. Most were idle, or away from their computer. Nobody responded. My messages grew more frantic, and I started telling people where I was, and to stop by in person for a host of barely passable reasons. I didn't care about anything by that point. I just needed to see another person. I also tore apart my apartment, looking for something that I might have missed, some way to contact another human being without opening the door. I know it's crazy. I know it's unfounded. But what if? What if? I just need to be sure. I taped the phone to the ceiling, just in case. So he's kind of almost full-blown into this now. He doesn't want to open his door. He has himself psyched up into believing that there's some sort of grand happening that for some reason nobody else is around, and it's just him. And I feel like that, even with the whole, scaring yourself thing, it's a pretty big stretch to get from, hey, something weird's going on, to nobody else is around, I can't find anybody, why am I not seeing anybody? But at the same time, he's not seeing people. So I feel it's mostly natural that he's kind of escalating this quickly. It can be tough to imagine, a couple days where all of a sudden you don't see anybody, you don't hear from anybody, and I can see how you would get pretty weirded out. I know I have friends that are long distance friends. They live in other states and all that. And if I go a certain amount of time without hearing from them, I get pretty concerned. I get pretty worried. So I can see where this is coming from. And so we have his plan to just try and get somebody to come visit him and keep his phone up in the bathroom corner just in case it rings. Let's continue with Tuesday. The phone rang. Exhausted from last night's rampage, I must have fallen asleep. I woke up to the phone ringing and ran into the bathroom, stood in the toilet, and flipped open the phone taped to the ceiling. A flip phone, so we know, we get an idea of when this was written. It was Amy, and I feel so much better. She was really worried about me, and apparently had been trying to contact me since the last time I talked to her. She's coming over now, and yes, she knows where I am without me telling her. I feel so embarrassed. I'm definitely throwing this journal away before anyone sees it. I don't even know why I'm writing in it now. Maybe it's just because it's the only communication I've had at all since God knows when. I look like hell, too. I looked in the mirror before I came back in here. My eyes are sunken, my stubble is thicker, and I just look generally unhealthy. My apartment is trashed, but I'm not going to clean it up. I think I need someone else to see what I've been through. These past few days have not been normal. I am not one to imagine things. I know I've been the victim of extreme probability. Probably missed seeing another person a dozen times. I just happened to go out when it was late at night, or in the middle of the day when everyone was gone. Everything's perfectly fine. I know this now. Plus, I found something in the closet last night that has helped me tremendously. A television. I set it up just before I wrote this, and it's on in the background. Television has always been an escape for me, and it reminds me that there's a world beyond these dingy brick walls. I'm glad Amy's the only one that responded to me after last night's frantic pestering of everyone I could contact. She's been my best friend for years. She doesn't know it, but I count the day that I met her among one of the few moments of true happiness in my life. I remember that warm summer day fondly. It seems a different reality from this dark, rainy, lonely place. I feel like I spent days sitting in that playground, much too old to play, just talking with her and hanging around doing nothing at all. I still feel like I can go back to that moment sometimes, and it reminds me that this damn place is not all that there is. Finally, a knock on the door. Okay, so he's convincing himself that everything's okay. He talked to Amy. I find it kind of strange that he only just found the television in his closet. I guess you could forget about that. I don't know how long he's been living in this apartment. He said he's college age, so I guess it probably can't be more than a few years. I don't know why he wouldn't know that a television wasn't in there or anything like that. Again, that's sort of a little nitpick, but it takes you out of it a little bit. It's just sort of like it feels a little too convenient. Like, I don't see why he couldn't just, well, I mean, I guess he just needed to hold off on having a television to help ramp up the solitude and the not knowing if anything was happening in the outside world. Although, you know, he says that television has always been an escape and it reminds him of the world outside. So it's strange to me that he wouldn't have this set up. But that's not too big of a crime. Just a little thing that's kind of stands out to me as a little strange. We learn a little more about Amy. We see that John feels pretty strongly about her. He cares about her a lot. Obviously, this is an old friend of his, and so we see why he's finding this comfort in her after so long. Let's continue and see what happens with this knock on the door. I thought it was odd that I couldn't see her through the camera I hid between the two soda machines. I figured that it was bad positioning, like when I couldn't see out the front door. I should have known. After the knock, I yelled through the door jokingly that I had a camera between the soda machines because I was embarrassed myself that I had taken this paranoia so far. After I did that, I saw her image walk over to the camera and look down at it. She smiled and waved. "Hey," she said to the camera brightly, giving it a wry look. "It's weird, I know," I said into the mic attached to my computer. "I've had a weird few days." "Must have," she replied. "Open the door, John." I hesitated. How could I be sure? "Hey, humor me a second here," I told her through the mic. "Tell me one thing about us. Just prove to me that you're you." I could be totally wrong because I don't know a ton about webcams, but I find it a little strange that he's like talking to her through the mic of this camera. Unless I missed something, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's like he's talking to her through the web camera, which I don't know if that's how it works. I could be wrong though. I am not going to pause this to go look it up. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Apologies. If not, that's something that's just a little weird. Anyway, she gave the camera a weird look. Alright, she said slowly, thinking. "We met randomly at a playground when we were both way too old to be there." I sighed deeply as reality returned and fear faded. God, I've been so ridiculous. Of course it was Amy. That day wasn't anywhere in the world except in my memory. I'd never even mentioned it to anyone, not out of embarrassment, but out of a strange secret nostalgia and a longing for those days to return. If there was some unknown force at work trying to trick me, as I feared, there was no way they could know about that day. "All right, I'll explain everything," I told her. "Be right there." I don't know if anyone else if it clicks with. Well, I guess maybe it does because the author wrote about it. I kind of identify with this something that isn't really a secret because it has to be, but because it's just like such a cherished memory, like a little moment that isn't really anything to anybody else. I identify with that. I can definitely point out to moments in my past that I feel similarly about, where it's just kind of like, this is just a special thing between me and somebody else, and we don't need to know that. We don't need to let the rest of the world know about that. So I like that because it speaks to me. Although we met randomly at a playground when we were both way too old to be there. That could just be me nitpicking. For some reason, I just never liked the sentence. That's might be unfair, like completely. But just for some reason, I think it's the word randomly sticks out to me because, like, I don't know what that means. But at the same time, this is less personal thing, so I guess it's okay. Just that's one of those things. Like whenever I read that, whenever I hear it in narration, it bothers me. It's weird. That's me. But anyways, let's see where this goes. I ran to my small bathroom and fixed my hair as best I could. I looked like hell, but she would understand. Snickering at my own unbelievable behavior and the mess I'd made out of the place, I walked to the door. I put my hand on the doorknob and gave the mess one last look. So ridiculous, I thought. My eyes traced over the half-eaten food lying on the ground, the overflowing trash bin, and the bed I tipped to the side looking for God knows what. I almost turned to the door and opened it, but my eyes fell on one last thing. The old webcam. The one I used for that eerily vacant chat with my friend. Its silent black sphere lay haphazardly tossed to the side. Its lens pointed at the table where this journal lay. An overwhelming terror took me as I realized that if something could see through that camera, it would have seen what I just wrote about that day. I asked her for any one thing about us, and she chose the only thing in the world that I thought they or it did not know. But it did. It did know. It could have been watching me the whole time. I didn't open the door. I screamed. I screamed in uncontrollable terror. I stomped on the old webcam on the floor. The door shook, and the doorknob tried to turn, but I didn't hear Amy's voice through the door. Was the basement door made to keep out drafts too thick? Or was Amy not outside? What could have been trying to get in? If not her, what the hell is out there? I saw her on my computer through the camera outside. I heard her on the speakers through the camera outside. But was it real? How could I know? She's gone now. I screamed and shouted for help. I piled up everything in my apartment against the front door. Okay, so, yeah, I feel like I say this every time I pause, but this is continuing to ramp up, which I guess is a good thing. It's a steady, the pacing is good. We have this, it's sort of a reach of this, oh, but the old webcam was there, and anything could have seen it. Anyone could see through it and see what I wrote. It's really a stretch, but at the same time, with the way the story's been going, you see why he's connecting those dots. And then on top of that, she didn't say anything. The door shook, and it's this heavy door. Someone just tried to walk in. She didn't say anything are you okay? She didn't say anything. He starts screaming, and they just try to get in the door. And when it says the door shook, that kind of gives the impression that it's something has some force trying to push this open because it's such a heavy door. I think this is a pretty solid for a first real scare of this story. It's that sort of almost open the door, and then this quick realization, and then boom, 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 boom on the door. It paints a nice image, and I think it. Like I said, I think the pacing is solid, and I think the build up to get to this scare is earned. Let's continue. Friday. At least I think it's Friday. I broke everything electronic. I smashed my computer to pieces. Every single thing on there could have been accessed by network access, or worse, altered. I'm a programmer. I know. Every little piece of information I gave out since this started, my name, my email, my location, none of it came back from outside until I gave it out. I've been going over and over what I wrote. I've been pacing back and forth, alternating between stark terror and overpowering disbelief. Sometimes I'm absolutely certain some phantom entity is dead set on the simple goal of getting me to go outside. Back to the beginning, with the phone call from Amy. She was effectively asking me to open the door and go outside. I keep running through it in my head. One point of view says I've acted like a madman, and all of this is the extreme convergence of probability. Never going outside at the right times by pure luck, never seeing another person by pure chance, getting a random nonsense email from some computer virus at just the right time. The other point of view says extreme convergence of probability is the reason that whatever's out there hasn't gotten me already. I keep thinking, I never opened the window on the 3rd floor. I never opened the front door until that incredibly stupid stunt with the hidden camera, after which I ran straight to my room and slammed the door. I haven't opened my own solid doors since I flung open the front door of the building. Whatever's out there, if anything's out there, never made an appearance, quote-unquote, in the building before I opened the front door. Maybe the reason it wasn't in the building already was that it was elsewhere getting everyone else, and then it waited until I betrayed my existence by trying to call Amy. A call which didn't work, until it called me and asked me my name. Terror literally overwhelms me every time I try to fit the pieces of this nightmare together. That email, short, cut off, was it from someone trying to get the word out? Some friendly voice desperately trying to warn me before it came? Seen with my own eyes, don't trust them. Exactly what I've been so suspicious of. It could have masterful control of all things electronic, practicing its insidious deception to trick me into coming outside. Why can't it get in? It knocked on the door. It must have some solid presence. The door. The image of those doors in the upper hallway as guardian monoliths flashes back in my mind every time I trace this path of thoughts. If there is some phantom entity trying to get me to go outside, maybe it can't get through the doors. Okay, so this proves me wrong when I talked about that earlier, that it didn't come back to this, so apologies about that. I was totally wrong. It brings it back that the doors are actual guardians. So I was wrong. Anyways, me bad. Doors have always been such intense foci of human imagination, always seen as wards or portals, special importance. Or perhaps the door is just too thick? I know that I couldn't bash through any of the doors in this building, let alone the heavy basement ones. Aside from that, the real question is, why does it even want me? If it just wanted to kill me, it could do it in any number of ways, including just waiting until I starved to death. What if it doesn't want to kill me? What if it has some far more horrific fate in store for me? God, what can I do to escape this nightmare? A knock on the door. Okay, so he's connecting more dots. He's feeling like that whatever this is, if there is a this, it works through the electronics, which we could see why he's making those connections. So he's basically busted everything. And like I said, the thing with the doors, he's getting the idea that for some reason they can't just go through doors, even though there must be some physical manifestation of whatever this is, if there is a this. Like I said, I was wrong about that before. That wasn't just, embellishing. Maybe I should edit that out. We'll see. Have to seem smart for my analysis show. Anyways, yeah, he kind of, which actually a point I kind of like going on in this, where he kind of says, well, I don't know, like, doors are this sort of symbol for portals and keeping things out and all that. And then he just also is like, or maybe they're just too heavy, which I kind of like, because it gives you both. It gives you is it supernatural? Is it physical and real? Is it mundane? Which is a good question to have in horror, in my opinion. And we still aren't totally sure if anything is happening. This is the definition of an unreliable narrator. So, as far as we know, he's just like weirding out all his friends and maybe everybody in the apartment. We saw Amy through the camera, so it could have been her out there, even if there's some inkling that it wasn't. But we have a knock on the door, and we'll see what this is now. I told the people on the other side of the door I need a minute to think, and I'll come out. I'm really just writing this down so I can figure out what to do. At least this time I heard their voices. My paranoia, and yes, I recognize I'm being paranoid, has me thinking of all sorts of ways that their voices could be faked electronically. There could be nothing but speakers outside, simulating human voices. Did it really take them 3 days to come talk to me? Amy is supposedly out there, along with 2 policemen and a psychiatrist. Maybe it took them 3 days to think of what to say to me. The psychiatrist's claim could be pretty convincing if I decide to think this has all been a crazy misunderstanding and not some entity trying to trick me into opening the door. The psychiatrist had an older voice, authoritarian but still caring. I liked it. I'm desperate just to see someone with my own eyes. He said I have something called psychosis, and I'm just one of the nationwide epidemic of thousands of people having breakdowns triggered by a suggestive email that, quote-unquote, got through somehow. I swear he said, got through somehow. I think he means spread throughout the country inexplicably, but I'm incredibly suspicious that the entity slipped up and revealed something. He said I'm part of a wave of, quote-unquote, emergent behavior, that a lot of other people are having the same problem with the same fears, even though we've never communicated. That neatly explains the strange email about eyes that I got. I didn't get the original triggering email. I got a descendant of it. My friend could have broken down too and tried to warn everyone he knew against his paranoid fears. That's how the problem spreads, the psychiatrist claims. I could have spread it too, with my texts and instant messages online to everybody I know. One of those people might be melting down right now after being triggered by something I sent them. Something they might interpret any way that they want. Something like a text saying, seen anyone face to face lately? The psychiatrist told me that he didn't want to, quote-unquote, lose another one. That people like me are intelligent, and that's our own downfall. We draw connections so well that we draw them even when they shouldn't be there. He said it's easy to get caught up in paranoia in our fast-paced world. A constantly changing place where more and more of our interaction is simulated. So it's, the psychiatrist is singing a pretty good song here. I suppose maybe it's a bit of a stretch to have this, like, cyber spread mass hysteria, but maybe not. After all, mass hysteria does exist. We may have not necessarily seen something on this scale in the digital age, and all that, but obviously we have seen evidence of it in the past. But I suppose in times of read the headline first, fact check later, this is a possibility. You get one thing that says, oh, this email is driving everybody crazy, spread this to everyone or, whatever. And people do it. Chain letters have existed. And it just takes that one person to believe it, and for that person to send it to 10 people, and for 4 of those people to believe it, and then those 4 people send it to 10 people each. Similar to a physical virus, an illness, things spread. And as I said, it can grow into an epidemic, and epidemics can get going pretty fast without control. So the whole story here, it isn't so far-fetched to where I'm taking out of it. And then at the same time, we get maybe a few slip-ups of words that encourage John to maybe continue his paranoia. I like the back and forth in John's head of maybe I caused this, but at the same time, like, what was he talking about that email getting through? So still, I think it's pretty obvious that the author, this wasn't a first draft like we see in a lot of creepypasta online posts, which are a lot of first draft, post it, here we go. He obviously did a little polish on this, and to make sure that these dots kind of connect. Let's continue. I have to give him one thing. It's a great explanation. No, that's what I just said. It neatly explains everything. It perfectly explains everything, in fact. I have every reason to shake off this nightmarish fear that something or consciousness or being out there wants me to open the door so it can capture me for some horrible fate worse than death. It would be foolish, after hearing that explanation, to stay in here until I starve to death just to spite the entity that might have got everyone else. It would be foolish to think that, after hearing that explanation, I might be one of the last people left alive on an empty world, hiding in my secure basement room, spiting some unthinkable deceptive entity just by refusing to be captured. It's a perfect explanation for every single strange thing I've seen or heard, and I have every reason in the world to let all my fears go and open the door. That's exactly why I'm not going to. This makes sense, right? Like, everything sounds too perfect. Like, I feel like that's something people think. Like, oh no, this is all too good to be true. So, again, the author is doing a good job of, keeping the paranoia alive in John and thus us, the reader, but also, kind of giving us, everything makes sense still. An interesting thing that I noticed while I was reading the paragraph, it offers up the idea that John is like the last one left, which is, it's interesting because it kind of offers these really high stakes that the world is dead and it's just John left. But again, that's something that we don't really know. For all we know, this thing, if there is a thing happening, is just happening to John, which is, it's interesting that we have, like, this sort of variable in the stakes of the story. Is it just John, or is it the world that's in danger? Or is the world already destroyed, basically, and John's the last man standing? It's an interesting question that I'm glad we don't have an answer to yet. Let's continue and see what happens with John not opening the door. How can I be sure? How can I know what's real and what's deception? All of these damn things with their wires and their signals that originate from some unseen origin, they're not real. I can't be sure. Signals through a camera, faked video, deceptive phone calls, emails, even the television, lying broken on the floor. How can I possibly know it's real? It's just signals, waves, light. The door. It's bashing on the door. It's trying to get in. What insane mechanical contrivance could it be using to simulate the sound of men attacking the heavy wood so well? That's a very good detail to put it in, because it shows us that it just sounds like people trying to knock on the door, and it isn't like some large beast trying to push in the door. It sounds like people. That's a very good detail that keeps it vague. Anyways, at least I'll finally see it with my own eyes. There's nothing left in here for it to deceive me with. I've ripped apart everything else. It can't deceive my eyes, can it? Seen with your own eyes. Don't trust them, they. Wait. Was that desperate message telling me to trust my eyes? Or warning me about my eyes, too? Oh my god. What's the difference between a camera and my eyes? They both turn light into electrical signals. They're the same. I can't be deceived. I have to be sure. I have to be sure. Okay, so I think we know what's happening here. John has decided that his eyes are a threat to his safety. So, what could he have done to take precautions against that? Let's find out in the entry marked Date Unknown. I calmly asked for paper and a pen, day in and day out, until it finally gave them to me. Not that it matters. What am I going to do? Poke my eyes out? Oh boy. It's good gallows humor there, John. The bandages feel like part of me now. The pain is gone. I figured this will be one of my last chances to write legibly, as, without my sight to correct mistakes, my hands will slowly forget the motions involved. This is a sort of self-indulgence, this writing. It's a relic of another time, because I'm certain everyone left in the world is dead, or something far worse. I sit against the padded wall day in and day out. The entity brings me food and water. It masks itself as a kind of nurse, as an unsympathetic doctor. I think it knows that my hearing has sharpened considerably now that I live in darkness. It fakes conversations in the hallway, on the off chance that I might overhear. One of the nurses talks about having a baby soon. One of the doctors lost his wife in a car accident. None of it matters. None of it is real. None of it gets to me. Not like she does. That's the worst part. The part I almost can't handle. The thing comes to me, masquerading as Amy. Its recreation is perfect. It sounds exactly like Amy, feels exactly like her. It even produces a reasonable facsimile of tears that it makes me feel on its lifelike cheeks. When it first dragged me here, it told me all things I wanted to hear. It told me that she loved me, that she had always loved me, that it didn't understand why I did this, that we could still have a life together if only I would stop insisting that I was being deceived. It wanted me to believe. No, it needed me to believe that she was real. I think it would be pretty hard to write this legibly, even if you didn't just gouge your eyes out and you just blindfolded yourself. I'm not going to test it, but I feel like if I covered my eyes and tried to write, it would be more chicken scratch than my handwriting usually is. So, this might be a little bit of indulgence, but it's for the sake of the story, and I guess we can let it slide without too much complaint that he's able to kind of write these full thought out, long sentences with no eyes. And it's still pretty convincing that everything around still seems normal, but he's insistent that it is not. Doctors talking about their lives, doctors and nurses, Amy coming to see him. But again, it's all a little too perfect. She's telling him exactly what he wants to hear, and that's feeding into the paranoia. As we see here, as we continue. I almost fell for it. I really did. I doubted myself for the longest time. In the end, though, it was all too perfect, too flawless, and too real. The false Amy used to come every day. then every week, and finally stop coming altogether. But I don't think the entity will give up. I think the waiting game is just another one of its gambits. I will resist it for the rest of my life if I have to. I don't know what happened to the rest of the world, but I do know that this thing needs me to fall for its deceptions. If it needs that, then maybe, just maybe, I'm a thorn in its agenda. Maybe Amy is still alive out there somewhere, kept alive only by my will to resist the deceiver. I hold on to that hope, rocking back and forth in my cell to pass the time. I will never give in. I will never break. I am a hero. Okay, great story. You know, that's the end, right? Oh no, wait. There's a whole another paragraph or so here. Let's read that, and I bet it's not going to ruin the story at all. The doctor read the paper the patient had scribbled on. It was barely readable, written in the shaky script of one who could not see. He wanted to smile at the man's steadfast resolve, a reminder of the human will to survive, but he knew that the patient was completely delusional. After all, a sane man would have fallen for the deception long ago. The doctor wanted to smile. He wanted to whisper words of encouragement to the delusional man. He wanted to scream, but the nerve filaments wrapped around his head and into his eyes made him do otherwise. His body walked into the cell like a puppet and told the patient once more that he was wrong and that there was nobody trying to deceive him. Okay, so at least this does address my earlier point about the writing can't be that great from someone who can't see, from someone who just lost his eyes. But, oh man, it shifts perspective to a third person that we haven't, addressed before. There wasn't, this journal was found or anything like that, or it started out just journal entries from John. And now it shifts to, basically a third person omniscient talking about the doctor. And it commits such a great sin of telling us that John was right all along, that there is something controlling the doctor. And this hurts the story so much. It frustrates me so much. And, ever since the first time I read it, this frustrated me. Because it pulls the curtain back. The whole time, the author did such a good job of keeping it pretty vague as to whether or not John was right. Everything could have been normal and John was just freaking out. Or John was right and there was some kind of conspiracy, some kind of attack. But we didn't know. And that's the best part of the fact that we didn't know. That's the horror of it. But unfortunately, the author says, no, this is the truth. Everybody in the world, they've taken over the world or whatever, and it's just John that's left. And that's what I meant earlier when I said that this story illustrates some of the best and worst of creepypasta. The best is obviously that right up until the end, this was a really good story. And it was mostly believable because you didn't know the stakes, if they were global or just centered around this one man. And really, I suppose it's a little just more of prose. It's kind of just a straight horror story than like a creepypasta. It's not quite so grounded in reality to be, I suppose, what is the traditional creepypasta, but it's good. Like I said, the pacing is good. The keeping us guessing is good. It's so good. And then when I say that it illustrates the worst of it, it's this lack of restraint that we get at the end. And lacking restraint is something we see come up in a lot of creepypasta, even the best ones. You get that little bit, that lack of editing. that you might need from somebody else. That's why when I say, a lot of them are first drafts that get posted, there's no editing to see, like, maybe I don't need this detail in, maybe it's telling too much. Restraint is such a strong device in horror to leave it up to the imagination of the reader, the viewer, whatever. It's often so much more effective to leave it up to what we think happened than to tell us what happened. And so that's why I say that, I don't want to say it ruins the story. I was joking a bit. I was being, exaggerating a bit. But it hurts it so much that, because all up until that, it was strong. It was good. I enjoy it. And then we get this. And, it's good because it's something for any other people who are looking to write as a great example of what restraint can do to your work. If we just cut out this whole last section of the doctor and revealing the truth, this would really be like an almost, pretty perfect story, quote unquote perfect, whatever. You know what I mean. But because we get the answers, and sometimes the answers are not what we need. We need just the thought, just the concept, just the idea. I think the horror is pretty strong, whether or not John was right. He believed it so much that he gouged his own eyes out, ruined his life. If he was right, then he is this last bastion, as far as we know, against whatever this, electronic threat is. And, there's nothing he can really do except resist. And that's scary, that, he's going to be stuck in a room for the rest of his days without his eyes. Even he is believing that he's a hero, he believes that he's done everything right. But that's scary. And maybe even the greater horror is if John is wrong, and this was all coincidence, and his paranoia drove him to snap and gouge his own eyes out, and now his life is ruined, and he's going to be locked away. And that, that horror is so much stronger without us learning the truth. And, like I said, that's why I wanted to cover this story. Because I think as we go along, the concept of restraint is going to come up a lot. This is such a strong example of how much restraint matters, especially in horror. The imagination is the strongest device to deliver scares. And, when you opt to take imagination out of it, you're not doing yourself any favors, you're not doing your readers any favors. So I think we've kind of talked the most, I think we've kind of covered everything we needed to cover with Psychosis as we went along, and there at the end, that's really the main point I wanted to talk about this, is, like I said, that word restraint is probably going to come up a lot on this show, and because this is one of the first ones I read, and because it's such, like, a glaring example, I wanted to get this, out of the way. But, like I said, overall, Psychosis is a good story. It's so strong. It's just, it trips up at the end, which I suppose, like I said, it's something that's probably gonna come up a lot in horror, whether it's major movies or just the story some 16-year-old wrote and posted on Reddit. Sometimes, things trip up at the end, but at least before this, it was good, Just reading through it again, even though I haven't in a while, like, I was into it, as I said, I'm just impressed at how much the dots kind of connected. But yeah, I think that kind of does it for Psychosis. Once again, this is credited to Matt Dymerski. I am not sure when it was originally posted, what year, uh, but I will post a link to it for on the from. I will post its creepypasta wiki link below. And I believe Matt Dymerski also has a personal site, which I will be glad to link to, give all that credit. So I think that about does it for the second episode of the Haunt Collection. We're two in, and if you like what you're hearing so far, if you think this is something you could be interested in, I'm aiming for an episode a week. Please like, subscribe, share it around. I will link social media below. I have a Twitter account, and at least I have a Twitter account by the time of this recording. If I make a Facebook or Instagram or Tumblr or whatever, by the time I post this, I will be sure to have the links below. Anyways, I think that about wraps it up. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Later.